Well, hello. I'm Franz. This is Andy.
Hey, everybody.
This is the February 2024 Town Hall for Concrete CMS. All the news you can use on the most awesomest content management system in the world. Let me see. I have totally hidden my agenda in a window behind a window. There we are. A couple of news items to talk about. We've got some new releases in the marketplace to hear about. Quick site to show off. So I think pretty typical agenda for these. A little bit longer than maybe some of them that we've done in the past, but probably not brutally long. Feel free to ask questions as we go, and I will try to throw them up and answer them. So there you go. So first thing in the news, we've been talking about this for a while, but we've actually launched our completely rebuilt documentation. So when you come to the docs now, you will see version 9 documentation. You can still get to the old stuff. This is everything that we have written for the last 15 plus years. But if you want to get to the new stuff, really 2 sections. One is using concrete, so anything that you do not have to be a developer for. The other is developers. We'll show you that in a second. And what is cool? Well, it is a linear path. So, fads in content organization come and go. For a long time, it was make very granular individual pages that you could deep link to. Now it's a little bit more, hey, give me a story I could actually choose to read. So that's what we've tried to do. Each one of these sections has one level of children, but no more. And you can see them at a glance as you expand and collapse this side nav. So our take is if you start at the top and you read down, you're going to get things that are progressively more nuanced, and kind of feel free to stop where it makes sense. By all means, jump around. But we've tried to organize things so it's kind of like most important stuff up first, and just a little bit of time kind of starting at the top, working your way down will leave you better for the effort. Yada yada. So here's everything that you need to edit your site and understand concrete in detail. Each page also has a nice table of contents at the very top, so you can quickly jump around, particularly on longer pages. There is a very similar developer side. We need to update that now, fellas. Now this is, I think our assumption is, well, you've already read enough of the user docs to understand what concrete is in broad strokes and how to get around what page types are and that kind of thing. And now you're looking to actually start building stuff with concrete. So, we get into pretty typical installation requirements and, a theme section. Oh, I've managed to find an error there, Evan. What are we doing? Let's try that again. There we go. So this should be able to take you through things, and that's what I'm looking for, that nice table of contents where I can jump to that part of the page and really understand what I'm doing very quickly. Important to note, there's a little drop down here. So 8x is really just legacy docs. We actually built all this on top of our multilingual stuff, and our expectation is when we eventually release version 10, we will copy all of these docs and call it version 10, and then the relationship between these pages and the new pages will be pretty strong. The relationship between legacy and this stuff is pretty loose because a lot of stuff got consolidated down. I think we had like over 500 or 600 pages that have turned into like 50. So it doesn't necessarily take it. This one does take me to a deep level page that is perhaps connected. But that is the idea, is that, well, at the very least, this will take you in the right direction where you need to be. Last thing, that was the last thing. Another thing I'll show you is you may have remembered this used to be like is this page helpful? Thumbs up, thumbs down. That was a score that we kept track of and talked about every week and tried to keep high. Metrics are really cool. It's hard to do much with like review-based metrics because the input that you get is really polarized. so we changed this to a link over to our documentation forum area, which is right here. So you can, if you're finding something to be confusing or you feel like we should add a new page, by all means, make a post here. The other thing that we got rid of is there used to be an edit button here in the, the hopeful spirit that other people would write our documentation for us. And, that is not a reasonable expectation for us to have. We've gone through the effort of rewriting all this and making it simple and clear, and I'm pretty happy with where it is. We've had some positive feedback from people who have seen it, and if you think that there's something that needs to be edited here or changed, by all means, let us know by posting here. That will take you over to our documentation forum where you can say, I think it should do this, I think it should do that. As always, we do have staff that are looking at every post in the forums. We don't promise an answer from our staff on every post in the forum because this is a community, but we do, I think we kind of treat it like a house party. I want to make sure that the conversations that are happening in our house are civil, that people are speaking in a truthful, useful, and kind way to one another, and we're trying to get towards answers. So in that spirit, my team is going to pay a particular amount of attention to the documentation section, look for opportunities to improve docs as we go, because it's a never-ending challenge. And we actually are tracking that in the spreadsheet. So we have links to every question that has been asked in the forum, our internal kind of thinking about, well, what does that actually mean? Whether we think that is something we're going to open or close is really like, is that just a non-starter, or could that actually happen? Looks to me like this should be closed. Just change that. And then we use Moscow for organizing stuff versus high, medium, and low. If you don't know about Moscow, I would highly recommend thinking about it. Instead of high, medium, and low, which are completely subjective, you organize tasks or ideas into must, should, could, and won't, which is typically more absolute and therefore helpful in this kind of thing. So we will share this spreadsheet in the documentation section as well. So you can kind of have transparency as to, did we actually understand your idea, and are we going to, at least do something about it one day. There you go. Those are the docs. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that, but by all means, stick them in chat. Hello, Jess. I was born in Florida. Ooh, big emoji hand. That's cool. And that is number one on our news. Number two is we've had 2 core releases in the last, I don't know, it feels like 4 hours, right?
Yeah, last week.
You want to talk about those, Andy?
Seems like more frequently than that, but yeah. So last Tuesday we proceeded with our on-scheduled release of our latest our latest patch version. So that would have been 9.2.5. That happened last week. You can see those updates on our downloads page. You can see what's changed in that, and then it's a handful of bug fixes, a couple nice little improvements, and a couple very low priority security fixes. But some nice updates. We didn't do a release of this in January, so this is making up for a little lost time, but glad to keep back on the update train. We did not do an 8.5 last week, but then immediately following this past release, this past Tuesday, we noticed a message in our rich text editor about the particular version we were using being insecure. And that is a bit confusing to us because one of the updates we did throughout this last little update cycle was update to the absolute latest patch version of our rich text editor. And so it's a bit, it was a bit mystifying seeing this message. And basically, I don't know if you want me to get into all of this right now, Franz, or if we want to break that out, or we could do either one.
Oh, this is the time. I think
let's do it. Fair enough. Yeah. So basically, what happened was our rich text editor is end of life at this point, and it is a client-side technology. So the fact that it's end of life should not be as concerning to everyone running Concrete as perhaps a server-side technology. like a library that runs on the server that perhaps can change the rendering output of your site should be. So we'll get into that in a second. I'm sure people have questions especially if they saw this message. But basically, ckEditor has end-of-lifed its major its version, and they have introduced a long-term support model, which is commercial, which is certainly their right to do so. And when they did their first release of this new LTS version, what that did was in their backend system, that caused the most recent open source version, which we have adopted in our latest branch, or in 9.2.6 and 8.5.15, to be marked as insecure. And in doing so, that turned on a notification, which we heretofore did not know existed, because we'd never seen it before. We'd never had any occasion to see it because it had never been something that had been tripped by their system. So last week, basically February 7th, a day that will live in infamy, we shall we noticed this big red obnoxious message anytime you loaded ckEditor, and sometimes it would be behind a dialog window, and sometimes it would be just right on top of the editor if the editor was in page.
Hey, I got it right there.
Yeah, there it is. So yeah, it's wonderful. So setting aside the fact that there is no way for Concrete to update to the LTS model in the open source version, we're kind of at an impasse. So there's more nuance to this, and there's many resources which we have written since then, which we'll probably want to get to. But suffice it to say, we did another release just yesterday with just a handful of updates, basically turning off. There's a configuration value that will force this notification to be turned off, and that is what those two updates, one for 8.5 and one for 9.2, 9.2.6 and 8.5.15, that is basically what they did. And I can sense the the concern in that is in the air regarding, well, isn't this just either kicking the can down the road or hiding the can entirely if you're just turning off this notice? How insecure is this editor? What does an insecure rich text editor even mean? Yes, so that's what these two updates are about. Before we get into the specifics of this, beyond this, I would say that 9.2.6 is definitely recommended. Even beyond this ckEditor stuff, they have since turned off this message because we raised an alarm with them. But even though the message is no longer displaying on existing 9.2 sites, I would recommend this update for all the other nice things that it brings, especially if you didn't update to 9.2.5 already. We are making Concrete better all the time, and this is just one of the ways. We just wanted to, now that we're doing a monthly release cycle, it's pretty rare for us to jump the gun on doing an interim release between that monthly, because we're doing releases much more frequently than we used to. But the egregiousness of that error, not just in how obnoxious it was in terms of presenting it over what you're trying to do, but also its content, the fact that it is perhaps communicating that Concrete is less secure than you might expect, that seemed like something we did not want to want to leave out there for you to see, but also we didn't want any ambiguity around whether Concrete is secure. It's one of the most secure open source content management systems that exists, and I know that to be the case because we work with excellent security people. So yeah, Franz, what else should we talk about?
Can you speak a little bit about the actual potential vulnerabilities in ckEditor? Like, what
sure,
is the
yeah,
scope here? Why is it not important to us?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull up a blog post that I made.
I guess while you're doing that, I will set a little bit of just like plain English construct. Consider that by the time you see ckEditor in Concrete, unless you have built something very custom on top of Concrete, you have already logged in. Concrete has already authenticated who you are. You're not managing permissions with ckEditor. You're not getting into parts of the dashboard with ckEditor. You are adding some content to a page somewhere after already being validated as an editor who has privileges to add content to a page somewhere. So the scope of the potential vulnerability, any attack vector, is really limited to, well, what content can I add somewhere? And that's not without some risk. I mean, you could, okay, like if that's, not, if you don't think about those paths and you end up with like a pop-up screen that asks you to log in again, that says your credentials to somewhere nefarious or something. But, we are already we're already past authentication. Here we go. I'll share your screen. That's it for me.
Okay. Yeah. So, can you see this blog post? I can't switch
Yes.
over since
Yeah.
I'm single
Yeah,
tab
you're
mode.
showing it.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So this is a pretty lengthy finding of fact regarding what this entire scenario is about. A sort of a timeline, what we knew when we knew it. It was interesting in this because when we saw this red notice, it was kind of like, well, this has been in 8.5 for at least 3 months. Like we updated the editor in 8.5 before we did it in 9.2. And no one had reported this. And I believe it really was the first thing that's interesting about this is this really is a result of a switch flipping on their end last February or the February 7th. So which raises its own questions insofar as how can ckEditor change the experience once it's from a centralized spot, considering we ship our own version of ckEditor, which is something we're going to continue to investigate and worry about. But basically, this is a result of them having done a release in their new commercial LTS version. And as Franz said, we should probably look at what those things they fixed are, because we cannot adopt them into the version that we have. So are these things super nefarious? Are we very much in danger? And the answer is no. So there are 3 issues that I could figure out from their release notes. And the first thing is the vulnerability allowed injected malformed HTML content bypassing advanced content filtering. So there is functionality in ckEditor for when it is being used in a way that is unprivileged. So think, for example, like building a custom application on like a college entry website or something, where like you can create an essay on a college application. You're a regular user, you are logged in, and an admin on this site might say, hey, I want to make sure that these students can't inject JavaScript tags into this thing. So I'm going to turn on advanced content filtering, which is a configuration option in ckEditor. And there was an issue with that. That's not something that we are vulnerable to, because in concrete, when you're using ckEditor, you are a privileged user, and it's pretty likely that you have the ability to add JavaScript, period. So, if you're using ckEditor for some custom solutions that don't fall under that, you might want to take a look at what's going on with that. For a very brief period of time, we had ckEditor as a conversations editor. That was a bad idea for any number of reasons, but it was something that we did support. If you had turned that on, you might want to look into that. That's not ideal. Again, the vector here is pretty low, but this is the first of those things that they mentioned. Additionally, that version, the issue number 1, if you delve deeply into their proof of concept, uses a thing called full page editing. And this is something that you could turn on in your implementation of ckEditor, whereby you can edit the entire content of an HTML page. Like, I don't know if it's inline or whatever exactly. This is not a plugin we even use, because Concrete doesn't operate that way. Secondly, the vulnerability allowed to execute JavaScript code by abusing the Ajax sample. So ckEditor ships a bunch of ckEditor sample code, and this is something that is a bit obnoxious. We have since removed this samples directory. There are static HTML pages in there that potentially could be misused if you sent posts to them. Again, this is not something that we believe is going to affect a large portion of Concrete sites. I've never seen it actually be abused, but they found that since these samples are perhaps less secure than they should be, that they should be updated. We have instead removed them entirely, because there's no reason for us to ship those samples in a product that uses ckEditor but is not ckEditor itself. And I would argue that they should put them in a separate repo for that reason. Finally, issue number 3, the vulnerability allowed to execute JavaScript code by abusing the misconfigured preview feature. So, yes, so there is a preview ckEditor plugin which will let you click a preview button and it will load a new window which shows you what it's going to look like. I think there's some sanitization issues with this. And so what ends up happening is you're running whatever you had in ckEditor on your server, which of course could lead to XSS. We don't ship with the preview feature turned on. It is a plugin that shows up in your editor configuration. So if you have turned that on for whatever reason, you might consider turning it off. Again, I have not seen this abused to any great effect in a concrete site at all, but better to be safe than sorry, turn that thing off. And those are those 3 things. So nothing we have seen here. In the past, we have wanted to keep ckEditor up to date because it's good to keep your libraries up to date, and this is a library that we do depend on. That being said, we have never seen a vulnerability in ckEditor cause problems on a concrete site. That doesn't mean it couldn't happen. We're still going to be certainly very aware of this going forward. But we just wanted to really communicate the level of risk here and what we have seen going forward. To help you know that to help you see the distance between the scary red message that you may have seen and reality.
Yeah, I think kind of speak to the larger question of, well, okay, now what? I mean, I think our commitment to use ckEditor and concrete CMS feels like it's probably on a short timeline. Did have a number of chats with them as this kind of license change came out and tried to find a way to make it work, but couldn't really get to a spot where it made sense. So I certainly understand. How do you say this? Like, I get it when you're working really hard, doing a lot of stuff, and you see the product of your work used by hundreds of thousands, or probably in their case, millions of sites, and like you're not getting paid, and and then you read about some startup that's missing a vowel that provides no value on Earth, and they're worth $10 billion. You're like, what is this? Is nonsense. I need my money.
That's fair.
I feel you. Like I know that I've met that demon in the hall. Or like, why am I doing all this for these people who don't pay me a dime? Question to ask. I think when you embrace that line of thought and you start to feel resentful about the people who are using this thing that you chose to give away, and you throw up big red messages saying this is insecure, when, come on, dude, like the fact that you're not,
it is as you made it.
I mean, that aside, like there's gradation to security, right? That's why we risk rank things as a CNA partner with the CVEs. Like, I mean, there's stuff in concrete where it's like we get reports on HackerOne all the time. We're like, oh, I can put JavaScript in the header field. Like, well, that's what it's for, dude. Like, spoiler alert, the staircase outside your door is dangerous if you throw yourself down it as well. Like, thus is life. So, it's separately, I think there is a responsibility we have as developers to be clear about security risk, to always be open-minded about, hey, this could, as Andy said, like, I don't know, but maybe I'm missing something here and you could really use this to, like, break into Fort Knox. But nah, dude, like, you really can't. And so, the way this looks is somebody who's eager to get paid throwing up a big red message saying you need to pay me. And I don't think treating the community that has chosen to embrace the software that you decided to give away for free in a kind of resentful fashion is probably a winning strategy.
And it kind of right? It's interesting, like, and I'm sure there's certain similarities to us. It's interesting to see this from a library as opposed to a product, and I think people might look at us as well, and we're similar as well. I know, in fact, we've talked to business people over the past who would look at us in the same vein. They would say, well, it's cool that you built a content management system, but what you built is a is not a product as such to them. And I have the same reaction when I look at ckEditor, and so I imagine it is very frustrating for them. They're probably looking at people who have implemented their library within their own SaaS applications. And looking at that, it's very easy to tell yourself, like, look, these people have built an offering on top of us. It should be reasonable for them to continue to fund the development of an LTS version if that's important to them. And in a vacuum, I can't fault that, and that makes total sense to me. I think what they have done is forgotten that they are in use by platforms that are not themselves exactly the same types of products. So there is no way for us to embrace the LTS model. Like it would be impossible for us unless I don't even know how we would do it, and I don't think it's feasible. And so then you say, well, then you can just upgrade to the latest version of ckEditor version 5. And setting aside the fact that that's a major development undertaking, it's also there's license issues along with that. So it is perhaps, as with anything, what is an irritation, or I hesitate to say a crisis, but what is something that is a roadblock can become an opportunity. So we are embracing it as an opportunity.
Takeaways. ckEditor will continue to be in version 8 and version 9 of Concrete for the foreseeable future. If someone were to fork ckEditor, perhaps add an F before the C and a D after the K, we would happily use that.
We can return to ckEditor. That's what it used to be. A return.
I can't imagine we're the only project that's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So I don't know, fellas. Forward. I asked, but tried. I don't see how we're supposed to do anything with it, and I find it pretty tedious that you put a big red message in front of all of the people who use my software.
Yeah.
So actively looking for ways around that, but I'm not actively looking to. There's a pretty big change to swap that out, so I don't think that's a version 9, even a minor version 9 release. I mean, we'll see.
I don't think so either.
I kind of think that that's too big. I think with Concrete version 10, as Andy mentioned, it's probably an opportunity to rethink what we're doing with the editor. I know Corbin has long advocated that, look, this is a major organ to a content management system. It is something that you certainly spend a bulk of your time using. Why would we rely on any third party for that? This is fundamental to the IP that we're offering. So know that there's some, to write and maintain such an editor. But I also, Andy just banged out a pretty nice markdown editor for our new marketplace work that we're doing. So I have long thought that the text editor in Concrete, it would be nice if it was more deeply integrated with the page editing experience. We stick it in the page, but it is what you use most of the time. So I can imagine ways of having it be a default block, having it. In fact, even when we used Redactor for a minute, we had the toolbar separated out that kind of floated on at the top of the page versus in each content area. I know we've often looked at how tools like Squarespace handle images, and not just kind of embedding them in this rich text editor, but really letting you drag and drop them around the page and have things kind of move around them. I don't know, very early days, but I guess this just kind of adds fuel to the fire of perhaps there's something with containers and some of the other blocks that we've got, and why would I be using, is this the right way to make and manage a table anyways? Doesn't that feel like something you could do in a block with more nuanced control? I don't know. This wasn't something that I was looking to solve yet again, but I think the writing is on the wall, and for version 10, we will have to explore a different solution. And I guess the last takeaway, using Concrete, and let's let's be thoughtful about the thousands of people who rely on this software and rely on us to have consistent and honest messaging about security issues, because we're powering sites for Department of Defense, we're powering sites for major financial institutions. Like, we are asking people to trust us with information that's pretty important and their public facing image. So being clear about what is a real security issue and what isn't, and treating everyone who uses our software as with respect, and not as as just a potential dime that we're not making, is something that we are going to continue to do our best to embrace. So there you go. Which I guess is actually a accidental but pretty good transition, Andy, to it's time to give thanks.
Nice.
So yeah, it's open source, and as we've just for apparently 20 minutes belabored, we're only here because other people choose to use our software, and we're appreciative of that. And people contribute in many different ways. It doesn't have to be writing thousands of lines of code, although it's always nice if someone does. But people submit code that we approve. People just submit issues, so we know, oh, people are having a challenge with this. People can help with documentation. You can still submit tutorials and edit those yourselves. We just took the edit button away on kind of the main pages. And we like to monthly just shout out some of the names that jumped up to us as we were doing that. So I'm going to toss back to you, Andy, for your gentle pronunciation of these somewhat challenging handles.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks to everyone who submitted code during the last month. That includes mlocati, wicasufatmawati, shahroq, danklassen, JohntheFish, aleksandr, hissy, and krebbi. To all those who submitted GitHub issues, thank you. That includes danklassen, moriaiy, ajenkins-dev, JohntheFish, gotofil, weergalm, deanL-zuiderlicht, systematic, hissy, SashaMcr, Mike DA37, C5 Dragon, Mathijs-Zuiderlicht, Soup Guy, ccmEnlil, Scow61, nickratering, aohlrogge, lvanstrijland, Mesuva, madesimplemedia, katzueno, aashish-aenow, Meson11, and duspal. And thank you to everyone who submitted documentation. That includes mlocati, JohntheFish, and mnakalay.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you to your speech and English teacher from high school, Andy. I'm sure they are very pleased with your on-the-fly pronunciation abilities. All right. I think it's time to check in on the marketplace and what new stuff has happened. Jess, how do we play this video? I've got, oh, here it comes.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 2024 Marketplace News. I'm JP, and along with Noor today, we have a number of new packages to introduce to you. Let's get right into it. First up, we have Icon Selector by dWebmakers. This add-on installs an attribute type for use with users, pages, and files, etc. That is essentially a font-awesome icon selector. This package includes a searchable icon list, making it easy to find the icon that you need. When creating your attributes, there are style and animation settings. When used as a page attribute, for instance, the core page attribute display block will display the selected icon. Icon Selector is $15 in the marketplace and is compatible with version 9.2.0 and above. Next up, we have Macaru Permission Report by Macaru Digital. This package installs an in-depth page permission search in the report section of your dashboard. As your concrete CMS site begins to grow, it can become difficult to keep track of who has permission to edit what and where throughout the different sections of your site. This package makes it simple to figure out what's going on. Choose the permission to display and filter by keyword, parent page, and permissions inheritance to get a comprehensive breakdown of your page permissions. Macaru Permission Report is $15 in the marketplace and is compatible with version 8.5.0 and above. Next up is Form Reform Data Picker by JohntheFish. This package requires John's Form Reform package be installed and installs 3 new block types for use with it. Connect a table picker input block to any HTML table in a page to allow users to select one or more cells in the table. The table as select and JSON as select inputs allow you to build a select input from any table or JSON data. Form Reform Data Picker is compatible with version 8.5.1.2 and above. And please note that although it is $15 in the marketplace, it is actually free, as it requires Form Reform. If you have a license for Form Reform, message John the details, and you will get this extension for free. That's everything for me this month. On to Noor for some more new stuff. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Justin, and hello, Concrete CMS fervid fans. Let's start with another of JohntheFish packages, Radio CAPTCHA. This is a simple fake CAPTCHA designed to help developers and other site builders test CAPTCHA on their website without going through the hassle of setting up API keys and things like that. Once in place, this CAPTCHA simply shows you two choices, human or robot, and that's it. So keep in mind, this provides pretty much no protection whatsoever against bots, and don't forget to set up a real CAPTCHA when going live. It's Concrete V9 and PHP 8 ready, and it's free in the marketplace. And since we're on the topic of real CAPTCHA, our next package is CAPTCHA by Cloudflare Turnstile from Mesuva, aka the community store man. This is a nicer alternative to Google's reCAPTCHA, nicer to set up, and nicer for the end user. The choice of size and the possibility to hide it altogether are lovely options. The principle is the same as with reCAPTCHA though. It tries to determine automatically if the user is human, and if it's not sure, it asks. The package will require you to have a free Cloudflare account and get an API key, of course, but it can be done in no time. This package is V9 and PHP 8 ready and free in the marketplace. And finally, we have Jero's Constant Contact integration from, you guessed it, developer extraordinaire Jero. For those of you who don't know it, Constant Contact is a marketing and mailing platform, an alternative to MailChimp. This package lets you display a mailing list registration form on your site. You can select the default list to add your users to, or you can let them choose for themselves. You can also allow them multiple lists or a single one. On submission, the user is added to your list in your Constant Contact account, and they can never ignore you again. This package is also V9 and PHP 8 ready, and it costs $30 in the marketplace. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening. Enjoy life, and until next time. Bye.
Cool.
Nice.
Nice to see. Yeah, good stuff. Nice to see a new CAPTCHA there from Cloudflare. That's going to be pleasant to have. And I'd question whether to just asking people if they're a robot or a human wouldn't work at this point. Like, who knows? I could see that actually tripping people up. Alrighty. Let's see. I guess that does... since we just talked about the marketplace, I should probably just quickly check in. We are still working on the marketplace 2.0. It is coming together nicely. We've got the back ends made. I've got people who are actually adding listings to what will be the production server for it. So we are manually migrating version 9 ready extensions over as I speak to you right now. Flushing out some of the the accounting and banking stuff. How do people offer discounts on top of Stripe? How do we issue refunds? Things like that are just kind of like connecting strings that already exist. So not going to give you a date for launch yet, but we are making progress, and that is very exciting. So just didn't want to leave that unaddressed because we talked about it so much at the last one of these that we did. Okay, next up, I think it is show and tell, and then we're going to be done. So if there's any questions that you want us to answer, go ahead and stick them in there. And here we go. So Jess is driving. We are looking at Thomaston Saving Bank with Rocks just relaunched this site, and it's a good looking banking site. So I don't know if that's concrete or not. That's probably some, yes, third party little guy there. Yeah. But yeah, what do we got? Ooh, look at that. Got some loading stuff, a map with locations, and building off of some type of searchable list here. So I might imagine that this is this built-in express or some custom block they have built that gives you both the maps and the stuff down below. Oh, the joy of accordions. Oh, that's fun. Yeah. And as always, you know, concrete is an excellent choice for these types of customers. Banking or anything finance related. We've worked with various kind of investment bureaus and hedge funds and that type of stuff that like using concrete. Healthcare, anything medicine related. I know in the UK, a lot of NHS sites are built with concrete. And here in the States, I think last time we checked, over 12% of all Department of Defense traffic is going through some type of concrete site. So if you are concerned about running a stable, secure content management system that you don't have to constantly be fussing with and worried about third-party tools that may or may not be secure to get your basic all right. Trying to think, do we have anything else to talk about? I feel like I mentioned the marketplace is going well, blah, 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 blah. Oh, the only other thing that has come up that is worth sharing here, I think, at the moment, is the idea of consolidating security-related fixes into more of a quarterly release. So we made a commitment, I don't know, middle of last year that we were going to start doing monthly point releases just to keep the cadence of releases up and to make it so we were being a little bit more deliberate with what was a point release versus a minor release versus a major. And so I think we've actually done really well with, hey, first Thursday of the month, we do a release. The only month we didn't was like, you know, it was like New Year's Day, and there was not a lot to release. So that's cool. I also know that some of us, not just us, I know some other concrete shops as well, that have maintenance agreements that are very clear that, look, if there is a security related update, we will get that onto your production site within X days. Which is great for keeping things secure, but not an insignificant effort if we are releasing something every month that might have a security issue in it. So to make our lives and those of you who are offering those types of services as well simpler, we are going to do our darndest to consolidate non-critical security issues into a quarterly release. One of those point releases every 3 months will be security focused. And that's where we will stack up some of this housekeeping stuff. Of course, if there is a big, you know, hey, oh, this is actually a serious issue that we're worried about, like we, you know, obviously reserve the right to release at any point that we want. But no reason to, I mean, it's this kind of double-edged sword. Like the one hand, you know, we're tracking metrics in HackerOne. We want to kind of keep reported issues coming down, and it's good to keep that, oh, you know, in and out. Let's keep things moving. On the other hand, you know, if all we're talking about is, you know, somewhere in the dashboard, there's a form that needs better form sanitation and an admin could be more admin-y, there's no reason that that couldn't wait for a couple months and get stacked up with a bunch of other security stuff. So we'll start to make that very clear in our point releases that this is either, this does include security issues or it does not. So you can all have an easier time honoring those service level agreements that you've made. And us too. That's what I know. Do you know anything that I don't know, Andy?
I don't think so.
At least for this operation, I think we're going to call it done and see you all again in a month or in the forums. Thank you so much for using concrete. We appreciate you. And yeah, talk to you later.
Thanks everybody.